Are you helping set up or are you just chilling backstage?
I'm just chilling backstage at the minute, and I'm just going to grab a coffee from somewhere and try and wake myself up a bit. I first started playing guitar when I was 11 years old, growing up in the Isle of Man. My dad played guitar, my older brother played guitar, so there was always guitars lying around the house. And one day I heard a Led Zeppelin album, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to do that. So I asked my dad for a guitar for Christmas, and that was the start of it all, really. And then I played in local bands on the Isle of Man. Up until I was about 17, I had the opportunity to meet Steve Gibbons when I was 17. The legendary Steve Gibbons band. I did some work with Steve, and then I got offered a session by a songwriter, a guy called Mitch Murray, and I did my first session for him when I was 17, and that started me off on the session work. So that was a good break, really. When I got to 18 or 19, I decided it might be a good idea to leave the Isle of Man and see if I could pick up any gigs in the UK as a guitarist. And it just so happened a friend of mine who I worked with on the Isle of Man had left and moved to Manchester, and he was playing with a legendary band at the time called Mad Jack's Travelling Circus. So I got introduced to all the guys in the band, and after a short time being in Manchester, their guitarist left the band. So that opened another door for me, and I started working with them. I did that gig for about 3 or 4 years on and off, and that was a great learning curve, that band. It was fantastic. Gary Barlow came about through a friend of mine called Paul Turner, who's the bass player with Jamiroquai now. He'd been playing with Take That from the beginning when the band started, and when they split up the first time and Gary pursued his solo career, Paul went on to do that, and they needed a guitar player, and Paul recommended me for the gig. So I went down to London and did a few little rehearsals with them, and Gary was made up with it. So I did a short spell with Gary through Paul. That was a really good little gig. That was nice. I started to move around the country a bit and meet other musicians, and because that's kind of how it works in the music business, really. It's just trying to make the most of the people you meet and the contacts you have, and people put you forward for gigs. And I got to meet a guy called Ryan Jarvis, who's a fantastic songwriter. I started working with Ryan, and we did lots of showcases. We were writing together, and we put a band together. We worked with Keith Hopwood from Herman's Hermits, who has his own little music company, and legendary producer Chris Neal did some work with us, and that was great fun. And while I was doing that, I actually had a great time. I got offered to do the guitar for the album for Bob the Builder, which was quite a funny interlude in my career, if you like. It was really good fun doing that. That was a laugh. So as I was moving around playing with different bands and starting to meet more people, that was when I joined a band up in Yorkshire called the Dynamite Brothers, which ended up as Paul Carrick's band, and we toured with Paul Carrick for about 18 months. Some of the guys are still with him now. We toured around 18 months. We went out to Bermuda, which was fantastic, through Andy Newmark, legendary drummer Andy Newmark, who was running the venue out in Bermuda. So we went out, and that was fantastic. And we toured all over. We did a whole UK tour. We played out in Tenerife, did lots of gigs with Paul. It was really good. Did that for a couple of years. I met Ed London about 15 years ago in Liverpool, through my brother actually, who opened a music venue in Liverpool, and I was away touring with Paul Carrick at the time. My brother arranged a meeting for me and Ed when I got back off tour, and I met up with Ed London, and it was the first year of the Summer Pops Festival in Liverpool, and they happened to be playing at that festival, and Ed asked me if I'd like to go along and have a play with them, so I did, and then I ended up staying there for 10 years, and then I had a little break away from them for 2 or 3 years, and I went back last year. I did a lot of festivals with them last year and recorded a few tracks on the new album, which is due out any time now. So it's just been an ongoing thing, really. It's like a family vibe, the China Crisis gig, so You know, it's kept going. So 14 years into it now, still doing the odd gigs with them, which is good. In between the China Crisis gigs, a friend I was working with, we were doing a few little jazz restaurants and stuff. A guy called Andy Williams, who was Errol Brown's MD, piano player, and he was also MDing Ruby Turner's band at the time. He called me up one day and asked me if I was available to do some gigs with them. So I went along and met the guys. The band was great. And I ended up doing the Ruby gig for about a year on and off, in between trying to juggle that with China Crisis as well. It was quite busy then, but it was good. I was, you know, taking as much on as I could, which I think helped me develop as a player as well. Yes, the Toyah Wilcox gig came about again through a friend of mine, Andy Doble. I play in a band with Andy, and he plays with Toyah's electric band, but she was looking to do something a bit different last year. She wanted to tell more of her life story, really. So she put a little acoustic thing together with me and Chris Wong, 2 acoustic guitars, and a PowerPoint presentation showing clips and films, pictures of her life story, and we called it the Up Close and Personal Tour. And it was so successful. We did it again this year, and it's been a really good little gig. It's great fun to do, and the fans get a bit more insight into what Toyah's about, and it's a bit more intimate than a band shows. Really nice concept. When I first came to Dover 5 years ago, I went up to an open mic night at the Boar's Head, and that was where I met pretty much all the musicians in Dover in one night, which was great, really. There was lots of people about. Mick Morris, Lane and Damien Napier, Sam Napier, Chris Honey, all the local players. They were all at this venue, and I met them all. And I just started working with a few of them, putting different projects together, because I didn't really have anything going when I came down here. So we put, first of all, me and Mick put Hands On together, which was a great little duo. We still do the odd gigs now when we can, which is nice to get together and do. And then I got asked by Andy Doble if I'd like to join EK1, because they had a space for a guitar player, and I joined that band over 2 years ago now, and I still play with them. And we just recently, again with Andy and Chris Wong and Nige Bulbin, put a little blues band together. The reason we chose to do that was because we're all doing different projects. We didn't have a lot of time to rehearse, so we wanted to pick a kind of genre where people were comfortable with it, and the blues is, you know, we've all got quite a lot of history with the blues, so we could sort of put it together reasonably quickly without a lot of rehearsal time, which we haven't really got as a band to do. So that worked really well. So that's the next project. Mr. Handsome, that came about when Lane asked me if I'd like to go up to the studio to record. Sam Napier was playing guitar with the band at the time, but he'd gone off to music college, and they asked me if I would like to play guitar on the track. So I went up to the studio and recorded the track, and then I heard that you yourself was going to be doing a video for the boys, so they asked me if I'd like to get involved in that, and I said yeah, and it was great. It turned out really good. Well done, I try not to stay in one gig now, because I like all the different styles of stuff. So I've got some China Crisis gigs coming up in the summer, as with Toyah as well. I've got a lot of gigs coming up with Toyah, with EK1, and I still do an open mic night every Thursday when I'm here at the Priory in Dover, which is a great night. We have all the new musicians come down, and some of the older ones as well, but that's a great night. So I just I like to try and mix it up a bit, you know. It keeps your mind active as well, playing all different styles of music, and, you know, keep you on it.
Give the fretboard a wipe and the strings on his arm.
I played quite a lot of guitars growing up, you know. I played most of the guitars that were out there on the market. The ones I use now, namely my acoustic guitar, was built by a local builder, a guy called Alistair Atkin, and he's really on the mark now. His guitars are beautiful instruments, all handmade, and I've been using that one for a couple of years now. And my electric guitar, I got a little deal with a company called Farida Guitars a few years ago, and I was promoting their guitars, doing guitar shows for them and exhibitions. That was great. I learned quite a lot from that, and I still use one of their guitars today because it's such a versatile guitar. I find I can do most of the gigs that I do without having to change guitars and stuff, and it's really good for me. It works for me. And the advice I'd give, probably the advice, how I learned to play, was buy a pretty decent guitar, which is quite easy to play, because if you buy something that's hard to play, you're not going to enjoy it, and you're more than likely going to stop doing it. So if you buy a half decent guitar, speak to some of the guys in the shops are good, they'll advise you, and buy a decent guitar, and then just try and listen as much as you can and try and pick up as much stuff as you can. And if you can get a good teacher to begin with, is always a good bet as well. But if you want to just learn yourself, then it's just a case of listening to as much music, different styles of music as you can, and trying to pick up and play stuff that you're hearing. That's the way I develop.